Very good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us here at our 7th installment of our NGPA COVID-19 Member Resources webinar. My name is Brian Gambino. I'm the president of NGPA, coming to you live from my home here in Chicago, Illinois. And we're so happy you're all joining us again. It's been a little bit since we've seen you on a previous webinar, but again, just putting together content to help our members and the aviation community in general as we continue to tackle this tough time here in our world, and especially within the aviation industry as we continue to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic. But again, thank you for taking time out of your day. Thank you for coming to learn a little bit more about a different topic that we've never forayed into, if you will, and that I'm actually really excited to listen in on today, something that I'm not very familiar with, and that's the world of corporate flying. So today, you're joining us here with some incredible teams from Netflix Aviation and Jet Linx Aviation to cover what's the business of business aviation. So we'll be getting to those teams shortly, but just want to tell you a little bit about how our webinar is going to be going today. For those of you who've been with us before, this is old hat, but for those of you who are joining us for the very first time, our webinar is going to be built in this way. I'm going to be handing it over to our presenters, to our team of presenters shortly. They're going to go through some information with you in regards to the world of business aviation. Once both our Jet Linx team and our Netflix Aviation team completes their presentations, we'll head right into a question and answer portion. And that's where we're going to take your questions live in real time. Feel free to ask anything you'd like of the different presenters that are with us. We're actually going to be bringing on some other folks from Jet Linx and Netflix at the end of the presentation, just for the question and answer, who might be better able to answer some of your specific questions. You'll see some options down at the bottom of your screen once we do get to the question and answer portion. One of those options will say raise hand. So if you're willing to ask your question in real time to our presenters, you'll be able to hit the raise hand function once we do get to the question and answer. And then we'll take note of who's in queue there for questions. We will call out on you. We will unlock your microphone. Our operations coordinator up in Minneapolis, Luke, will do that, and you'll be able to ask your question live in real time to our presenters. For those of you who might be a little bit shy and you don't want to ask your question live on the webinar, feel free to hit the chat function. You'll see chat down at the bottom. You can send a message to all panelists, and then we'll read your questions for you to our presenters, and they'll be able to answer it for you right here on the webinar. A little bit about NGPA. We are here to build, support, and unite the LGBTQ aviation community. That is the mission of our organization. And right now, our strong mission has been to focus on our membership and focus on those who are in need as they battle through these tough times in the COVID-19 pandemic. So if you are not yet a member of NGPA, if you are joining as just an industry partner, we kindly ask you to head over to ngpa.org. Take a look at our website, take a look at the different products and services that we do offer, and consider joining our family here at NGPA. Membership comes in multiple forms. You can join as an individual member. You can join as a family. If you have multiple people in your household, you can all become members of NGPA. We also have ally members, so folks who support the LGBTQ community. You can join as an ally, or you can join as a student. Those prices range from only $49 a year up to a high of $79 per year. So very affordable membership to continue to help us build, support, and unite that LGBTQ aviation community worldwide. So check it out, ngpa.org, up in the top right portion of our website, the Join Now function. We'd love to welcome you to our extended family here at NGPA. So as I said, this is the 7th installment of our COVID-19 member resource webinar. If you've been with us before, you've seen our medical information, you've seen our financial information, job planning information. We delved into the world of getting your logbook in tip-top shape, and we also covered some issues in regards to dealing with an upcoming furlough for those of you in the commercial side of aviation or in other areas where you may have lost your job, and dealing with the mental aspects of that. And today, we're going into an area that some are familiar with, many are not, and I think it's a really cool area of aviation that I'm excited to learn about, and that's the world of business aviation. So to kick it off today, we're going to head on over to our presenters at Jet Linx Aviation as they take us through that what's the business of business aviation. So without further ado, I'm going to kick it over to Nick Hines from Jet Linx Aviation in Omaha, Nebraska. Nick, it's all yours. Thanks so much for joining us today, and interested to hear what everyone has to present. Welcome to our whole team of presenters. Nick, take it away.
Thank you very much, Brian, and thank you to both all of the NGPA community as well as Netflix for allowing us to be here to give some insights into both Jet Linx business as well as to answer any and all questions that anyone might have for us here today. So with that being said, I'm going to dive in here to our presentation. Pull that up. And first thing we would like to do is to go ahead and start by having some of our team members here that are going to present to introduce themselves a little bit. Is my screen sharing coming through, Brian?
It sure is. Looks great.
Great. Thank you very much. So to kick things off here today, I'd like to have both Ari Sarmento, our System Chief Pilot, as well as Jeff Kircher, our Jet Linx Houston-based pilot, just introduce themselves and give a short overview of their career and how they came to Jet Linx Aviation.
Jeff, if you would like to go first.
I've been with Jet Linx for 4.5 years, going on 5. Previously with Republic Airlines in the regional, and prior to that, I was doing 91 corporate operations. Currently flying the Citation 10 and flying about 400 hours a year.
Great, excellent. I've been with Jet Linx now for about a year this time around. I've been with Jet Linx twice before. I started my aviation career with American Airlines, spent about 15 years with them, and went into corporate aviation in about 2001. My actual first corporate job was flying for a small charter company out of Provincetown, Massachusetts, and NGPA connected me with that first job. I've worked for several other charter companies, FlightWorks, Executive Flightways, have flown many different types of aircraft, everything from a G650, Falcon 2000, EXEZ, Hawkers, Saabs, Embraers. But now I'm enjoying being the chief pilot here at Jet Linx.
Thank you, Jeff and Ari. And I am going to turn it over here for the first slide back to Ari to give a little bit of an overview of the Jet Linx Aviation kind of overview and structure.
Thank you, Nick. Jet Linx currently has about 19 different base locations. We've been in operations for about 21 years. We have plus 100 aircraft. We've also just acquired a company out of the Teterboro area, Meridian Air Charters. So we're adding a few large cabin aircraft to the operation. Of all the aircraft we have about 34 different types and about 40 different variants across those types. So the company has roughly about 450 employees and about 280 pilots currently. Most of our pilots do live at the bases. There's a few that are floater pilots, but that's pretty much the overview.
Thank you, Ari. So then I want to turn it over here to Jeff as well to talk a little bit kind of about our 5-star service mentality, some of the expectations that we have for our pilots as far as service standards for our clients.
Differs ourselves from other 135 companies. We approach customers on a more local level, allowing each base location to cater to their local clientele a little better than a national call-in number or a 1-800 number. So each of our pilots and everyone in our company gets a training to exceed customer service, how to approach the customers and to anticipate the needs of our clients to give them that exceptional service that they're paying for. And I think that really sets us apart because of our training that we do for our employees and pilots. We're more aligning ourselves in the customer service business and exceeding expectations for clients to give them that 5-star service, as we call it, which differs a little bit from the airlines because the pilots don't really integrate themselves with the customers. It's more or less the flight attendants, the gate agents, where we at Jet Linx, we're doing all that with our team of CS at the local bases.
Yeah, and important to note as well, Jet Linx, we do not operate a floating fleet. So, you're, as a pilot, except for just a few, going to be attached to a specific tail number, working out of a specific base location. So we really do have an expectation and are looking for pilots who want to build that relationships with the owners as well as Jet Card members that are going to frequent that aircraft, with the idea that we as a company get to the point where we're able to meet the needs of our clients before they ever even get the opportunity to ask for it, because we have such a good relationship with them. Moving along here, wanted to talk just a little bit about our culture. As you see below here, we have a supply the high five mentality. That high five comes from our 5 core values, which are integrity, compassion, selflessness, dedication, and enthusiasm. And these are definitely things that we are consistently looking for as far as hiring mentality goes for, but also shout outs within the company. Each month we have a supply the high five roundup, and it allows any employee to more or less shout out an employee that they think has gone above and beyond in accordance to our core values. So you'll often see, maybe a general manager shouting out a pilot that went above and beyond, that maybe an owner left a case of wine on an aircraft, and the pilots took it upon themselves to go the extra mile and drive out to make sure our clients got their case of wine, or little things like that. I want to hand it off both to Jeff and Ari a little bit, maybe to both give your feedback as far as your life as a pilot and some of the perks and benefits of being a pilot with Jet Linx Aviation.
Jeff, do you want to do the perks and I'll do the benefits?
So some of the perks that we have with being a local-based 135 company, there's no commuting. When you do travel, you keep all your travel rewards, you keep your hotel points, you keep your car rental points, Uber points, Uber Eats points. We're able to schedule our crews more time at home rather than a traditional schedule. You'll maybe go out on a 3 to 4 day trip and then be home for 2 to 3 days. We do have teams that look at annual pay raises. We don't have set pay scales, but they're all negotiated on your performance every year. We have company issued iPads with all the apps that you could use for flight planning, flight training, flight safeties, even on the iPads now. We do have corporate cards that we give every one of our pilots to buy meals with. The daily limit is about $50. Obviously, that will fluctuate with the area that you're in. You will use that card to buy your own hotels, food, so no more packing lunches or lunch boxes for a 3 to 4 day trip. We are KCM. We have KCM badges. And we do have many growth opportunities within Jet Linx. Myself, I started off as a Lear 40 first officer and upgraded in 4 months to a captain, and then a few months later moved to the Citation 10 and upgraded to captain on that as well. So the growth opportunities in this company are great. I love to promote my pilots in Houston, and I would say we see probably an upgrade from FO to PIC probably every 6 to 8 months within the company.
Excellent. Thank you, Jeff. Some of the benefits: medical, dental, vision, healthcare benefits, health savings accounts we have, flexible spending account, life insurance, long-term, short-term, employee assistance program, paid time off, vacation time or sick time, company paid airline transport pilot license. So if you come to us with a commercial during your type, we're going to give you an ATP certificate. We'll also type every pilot as a PIC, regardless of your duty assignment. We also have an ASAP program, a pretty robust ASAP program that many of you are probably familiar with. So those are just a few. Oh, and we also have a relationship with Southwest Airlines. So we are able to non-rev on Southwest as well. And we're looking at a few other airlines to partner up with as well for some pathway programs. So those are some of the benefits.
Thank you, Jeff and Ari. Moving on, wanted to touch just a little bit on the Jet Linx schedule. And this as well is going to be managed on what we call an account-driven basis. So all the Jet Linx schedules are based around having 8 hard days off a month. Not oftentimes is that going to be stacked into one group. What it is working together with the other crew members on your account, whether that's getting together and having a lunch or text chains, email chains, and just working out amongst either the 2 or 3 of you on that account to decide, I'd like these days off, and I'd like these days off. As long as we have 2 pilots who are able to cover each day that aircraft is able to fly, we're pretty good with that crew working out their schedule amongst themselves, and then submitting those days off to our crewing department in our operations center in Omaha. I'd like to hand this off, and maybe all 3 of us can touch on this about the pilot hiring requirements. And we can provide this guide as well, so don't feel like you have to sit there and cram down any of these numbers if you want to take notes. But pilot hiring requirements, we are driven by some of our safety standards agencies that really guide our hiring requirements for Part 135. Jet Linx is one of only a handful of companies that have the highest safety rating in all 3 business aviation categories. So we have Wyvern Wingman, we are an Argus Platinum rated organization, as well as an ISBO Stage 3 company. And so a lot of times they're setting a standard that we are going to adhere to in order to keep those ratings when we are approaching hiring for a new aircraft. Jeff or Ari, any additional thoughts here?
I would just add that on this chart, if you're looking at, for instance, total time on a light jet, 3,000 if you're going to be a PIC, 1,500 if you're going to be an SIC, and so on across this chart. We also have a few pathway programs that if you've been in the military or a 4-year degree or a 2-year degree, that we can go lower than the 1,500 as a new SIC to us.
Moving forward here, wanted to talk just briefly about the recruiting process. In general, there are about 3 big steps to the recruiting process here at Jet Linx after you submit an application. As a recruiter on the team, I'll be one of the first point of contacts, reviewing that application, seeing if you meet the necessary requirements, as well as maybe looking for things we might consider a cherry on top, being local to the area, potentially already having a type rating in the aircraft that you've applied for. If it's an SIC position, of course, that is required for PIC positions. But if we think you meet the requirements, we're going to move forward with the talent acquisition interview, in which we're going to cover things such as potentially the specific schedule for that aircraft, start talking about salary requirements, looking at your hours, as well as some behavioral questions and looking at culture fit. That's a huge thing in that interview, is we're looking for people that we think are going to be in adherence to our core values and exemplify Jet Linx well with our clients. And if that goes well, we are actually implementing a pilot panel interview as well, as which both Jeff and Ari are members of. So maybe Jeff, if you want to talk just a little bit about what you're looking for in a pilot panel interview.
Looking for the right fit, the right culture fit. That's the main driving factor for us. Obviously, meeting the required mins is a requirement, but we're looking for the pilot that's not just looking to show up for a job. It's looking to really embody our culture. That's a really driving factor for who we are selecting, and it really shows during that process who stands out and who does not. Having a great attitude. If you make a mistake, just admit it, be yourself. That's the best advice that I can give you.
Thank you. And then if we feel that you are a qualified and top candidate after these 2 interviews as well, we will have a base interview. That's an opportunity to meet with the local base chief pilot, potentially the base president that runs that location, as well as other crew members on that tail number, and potentially that aircraft's owner as well. So that is kind of the high-level overview that we had here for Jet Linx Aviation. I would like to hand things over to Emily on the Netflix team as well for their presentation.
Thanks, Nick. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining in, and thanks to Jet Linx for being open to kicking us off today. And we're really excited to just be partnering with the NGPA as well as Jet Linx and kind of talking about business aviation as a whole, because it's really important to kind of all parties involved. So we're excited for that. As Nick is not presenting, I'm going to go ahead and get our presentation up. But as a quick introduction on me, my name's Emily. I am part of our talent acquisition team, or the talent acquisition team responsible for our aviation department at Netflix. I've been at Netflix a couple of years now. I support other areas of the business, but I really enjoy just this group and seeing how much it's grown over the last 3 years. It's definitely a passion area of mine. And with that, I'll kind of turn it over to Brock to introduce him.
How's it going, everybody? I'm Brock Jordan. I'm the interim head of aviation here. I'm on the, I fly the Gulfstreams for Netflix. It's been about a year and a half of employment, the best job that I've ever had to experience or had the opportunity to experience. So for me, a little background on my career. I started in pretty much charter out of the get-go, flying King Airs. I worked in the charter world for about 15 years and then transitioned into the Part 91 corporate operations and privately managed aircraft until I ended up here at Netflix. So from my background, I really don't have the experience in the 121. So my knowledge that I like to pass along is what we're about, what we do, and maybe possibly the unknowns that we supply and support to our corporations in the business world. Ricky?
Hi, everyone. I'm Ricky Barretto. I'm the chief pilot of the King Air 350 fleet. I've been with Netflix for almost 2 years now. Prior to Netflix, I was a check airman for a 135 out here on the West Coast. Flew for Jet Suite. I was also a check airman for Surf Air. Also started my own flight school, Part 6191 flight school, and had a brief encounter with the 121 world with American Eagle back in 2010, only to see the result of the economic turndown was furloughed and was just bad timing. And so this is my first formal experience in the corporate world, and for me as well, this has been the best job that I've had in corporate in aviation by far.
Thanks, guys, for introducing yourself. I paid them to say all those really great things about our department. I'm just kidding. All right, we'll jump right in.
Ricky and I did not match. This is not a uniform. We had the same shirt on by accident, which is a Netflix supplied shirt.
Yeah, this is our typical work swag, and this is something that you'll often find us flying in. And so you'll find these shirts. They actually have various productions labeled on them and what have you. So this is pretty typical attire for us.
Oh man. Well, thanks guys for showing how aligned you are in preparing for this webinar. And I'll turn it over to Ricky to kind of just touch on, what does our department do in terms of serving the business? Why do we have it? And just give you some general context there. So we can kind of get you a baseline understanding, since I'm sure some of you on the line might not even know that we have an aviation department. So Ricky, turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Emily. All right, so our flight department has actually been in existence for almost 3 years now. For us, we actually leverage these aircraft to enable the efficiency of the business. As far as, the two fleets, as Brock stated, we have the Gulfstream, the G550 fleet, and the King Air 350 fleet. So we actually serve two different purposes, really. Not only supporting the business needs, but when as it pertains to the shuttle program, it allows us to essentially own that asset in-house. And so for us, it's a great tool to increase the productivity of our workforce. It just gives us that consistent travel experience in a very intimate setting. All of our King Airs are set up in the executive configuration. And so for us, it's quite nice to have teams traveling together, whether it be for an offsite, a team building exercise, or meetings in various locations. They continue to be productive in a Wi-Fi equipped executive cabin aircraft. And for us, it's actually quite nice because we get to know all of our passengers because they are peers of ours, they're our colleagues. And then also it allows us to have the flexibility to travel whenever necessary. I mean, essentially it's not having to depend on an outside operator just gives us complete control and flexibility over the maintenance schedule, the flight schedule, and just being able to go as needed.
Great, awesome. And then I guess transitioning over to Brock to kind of talk a little bit about, you know, our operations in more detail. Ricky kind of touched on that, but just tell us a bit more about, you know, the services we provide in-house.
Brock, I think you're muted.
That helps to unmute. So Ricky reviewed the purposes of the need for an aviation department within our business. Again, like Ricky said, we're very young as a corporate company, but obviously business travel and corporate travel is nothing new. For us, the programs that we offer to our employees is one of them that Ricky touched on, and he champions as the chief pilot of the King Air 350 fleet. For those that are unfamiliar with a King Air 350, it's a turboprop, and it has about eight seat configuration for our employees. The purpose for us to utilize and leverage these within our business model is to provide our employees with a scheduled service. So we have two main bases, one in Los Gatos, which is in the Bay Area of California, and then we also have one Icon, which is in downtown LA. So the airports we utilize to service our employees are Burbank and San Jose. We run a shuttle program which creates the efficiency of our employees' time, frees them up from airlining every day, almost saves a day's worth of valuable work for each employee to have access to reserving a seat on our shuttle program. One of the great benefits and forward thinking that our company has is each employee at our company has access to reserving a seat. So it gives us the freedom and responsibility, which is part of our culture, to leverage this tool to be more efficient. The shuttle program is so valuable to moving our executive pieces and our basic employee pieces around to help support our business structure. From an international and domestic business needs, we also have our Gulfstream 550 fleet. Seating configurations of 12 to 14 with a range of about 6,500 nautical miles. When we mostly think Netflix, most people broadly think it's, you know, domestically here in the United States. Those that have traveled outside the United States have probably been exposed to more media when you log into your Netflix account. So the 550 business model is to create efficiency and give us that platform to have a global reach for executive travel as well as for talent and production level. So that we technically have offices in pretty much every corner of the world and every region. We produce media in every language and local content. So these tools give us our executives accessibility to get to these locations to facilitate the business transactions that we need. Emily, if you want to go to the next, oh, perfect. Our team structure, just to kind of, you know, our scope is a little bit smaller than Jet Linx when we talk about how many people we have scaled on our team, and also the importance of our team and how we have scaled it to where we're at. We run a pretty efficient, streamlined team of Gulfstream and King Air pilots. We have about 10 Gulfstream pilots right now, and we have about 14 King Air pilots. We also don't just have pilots on full-time staffed employees. We also have a full flight attendant department, which is staffed with 6 flight attendants, a full maintenance team that supports our entire operation based in Burbank with 2 hangars that give us the internal maintenance needs that we can do, that we can provide to our fleet. And then also we have an amazing flight scheduling team, which is made up of 3 schedulers. So as our scale isn't very large in a corporate flight department, we are fairly large in that scaling. And when we kind of look at what Jet Linx has touched on, when we really look at one of our core values is, and when we're looking for individuals to bring into our team to be that culture fit, we really look at people over the process of it. And we're really hiring that person. which tends to be a little different than the hiring methods within our industry. They're very metrics driven. They're very, you have to have so many hours. Although we do set some benchmarks for these flight times and requirements, they are very flexible if we are able to find that right team member. And fortunately, partnering with NGPA and other operations and our groups within aviation, these are our portals. These are our ways to continue to build on these relationships, to find these amazing, talented individuals to come to our team. Even though we currently are not hiring right at this moment, these events, thank you for Ryan for putting this on, help us to bring awareness to our industry, as well as continue to build those chains and answer questions that you might have. I'll pass it off to Emily for our kind of a little bit of an overview on our culture.
Thanks, Brock. Yeah, I think actually I'm gonna have Ricky kind of help me talk through a little bit of our benefits. I think that is kind of a window into the culture. The way we pose them is comprehensive, but we can kind of talk a bit. I mean, I obviously support other areas of business, but I think one important thing to note is that this really does span all corporate employees get the same benefits that our aviation team members do. So they're really considered part of the company. But I kind of turn to the subject matter experts here on the team to talk about, you know, what that might be different from in other areas of the aviation industry. So Ricky, if you want to just kind of touch on more of that.
Yeah, definitely. So as some large corporations have their own flight departments, they tend to have employees or that flight department within a sub corporation, if you will, or they don't necessarily have the same benefits and perks as the parent company. We are all full-time employees with Netflix, which is absolutely amazing. And so all of the benefits that are applicable to all FTEs are applicable to us. Our compensation is not set by specific benchmarks, flight time, you know, aircraft that one may be flying or anything of that nature. It's essentially tailored to that individual's personal top of market. And you might think what that is, right? You might be thinking, what is that term? And so what we do is gather all of the information brought to the table when a person is being considered for a position. We are constantly researching, you know, what the market is doing, what a person with this level of experience would be compensated at in a similar position. And so as compensation is finalized, we essentially tailor it to that individual and finding their top of market. Some of the additional benefits that we have here with Netflix paid time off, we don't have defined time frames for time off. We essentially encourage individuals to find a work-life balance and take the time that they need to make them productive when they are in the workplace. And that might be a little unorthodox for most. Obviously, I myself, coming from other operations, were allotted, you know, a week the first year of vacation time of PTO, and then, you know, every additional year after that, you might accrue a day or two a month or something of that nature. We don't have defined time frames, and so you might think that's a little different, but it also translates into our next point here of flight schedule flexibility. Again, to kind of stray away from the traditional mindset of having set schedules, our approach to scheduling is quite unique. So what we try to do to find, obviously, we know that we need to support the business. We do what is in the best interest of Netflix first. But when it comes to our scheduling, we typically give our team members time to come to us and let us know when they need the time off, and then we build the flight schedule to crew that accordingly. And so again, a little unorthodox, a little away from the traditional mindset, but we don't have fixed schedules. I know working with other operators, I was on an 8 and 6 schedule, and that would then translate into a 10 on, 4 off, and then next thing you know, you would come home just to do laundry and then have to disappear again. And so for us, again, we really want to invest in our team and focus on making sure that you know, everyone is well rested and enjoys their job. And so it's just an effort that we've worked on here over the past 2 years almost, to make sure that you know, we do right by Netflix, but also consider our team. And then as it pertains to parental paid leave, Again, we are allowed up to a year off full pay through Netflix. We find that most of our employees average anywhere from 6 to 8 months off. I myself was an employee with the company for 3 months. At 3 months of employment, my wife gave birth to our son, and I ended up taking, I believe 14 weeks it was, full paid leave through Netflix, which was an amazing relief. Obviously in that time frame, I was transitioning from working at a previous operator for over a year and was thinking that I was going to have to be applying for state programs and what have you. And it ended up just giving me such a peace of mind and knowing that everything was going to be okay. And so that was amazing. In addition to that, we are allowed to preview content before it's released to the public. We do have programs such as Work Not Drive, which is essentially Netflix will pay for transportation for you to enter the workplace so that you can not have to deal with the stresses associated with driving in traffic, thus allowing you to arrive in the workplace much more refreshed, content, and then obviously productive. We also have stock option programs available to us and employee contributed 401k programs.
Awesome. Great. Thanks, Ricky. And then I'll just kind of take us into our last slide here and round it up. I think there's been a lot of talk on both ends, which I think is really important in business aviation, is just the culture, right? And really providing a service to the business that they likely would not get in a less tailored environment, right? Or less in-house environment. So at Netflix specifically, I wanted to just highlight a couple of the key areas of the culture here that stand out, I would say, and especially when we hire in aviation, I think we pay particularly close attention to, because it is very different from a traditional aviation environment. So Brock, I think, mentioned too, freedom and responsibility. At Netflix, there's a lot of trust and transparency. So in terms of, internal documents are shared openly. There's a lot of information you're privy to, especially in the aviation space. You're often flying talent, right? And that shows and movies are going to be coming out before they're released to the public. And so with that, we really trust our teams to do what they think is best for the company. And we also, feel that by sharing information openly, it empowers our team members to make the right decisions. But it also gives them a sense of responsibility and self-discipline. And granted, in aviation, obviously, like, safety is the #1 priority. So being comfortable to know, not everyone is going to find the same solutions when you're in a pinch, but to understand that you're responsible for that aircraft at the end of the day, and speaking up when you need to is going to be really, really important for all of us. And we really trust our teams to do that. And I think follow up to that is just inclusion and selflessness are values of ours as well. So we seek to find people to add to our aviation team that are really open-minded and in search of new ideas and are able to collaborate effectively with a team. We're not a very structured or hierarchical environment either, which I think can be a bit different. There aren't a lot of titles in our department. Everyone's kind of brought in at the pilot or the captain level, depending on the aircraft they're flying on. And because of that, we really rely on everyone to work together to problem solve. And, let's say we're on a leg on the Gulf Stream, and, we're in Seoul and we need to source a meal for talent, and, the flight attendants are, wrapping up, getting things for the aircraft. That might mean the pilots are going out and sourcing the meals. So everyone kind of just takes an approach where it's all hands on deck, and we really work to, be open to new ideas and create a space where everyone feels like they can bring their whole self to work, but they're also selfless with their time. And then lastly, informed captain and disagree openly. Those are two kind of key areas I see usually question marks from my aviation candidates that come through and ask, how does that really work? But it's true. I think we rely on open communication at Netflix, and with open communication, we really look for people who are comfortable speaking up if they don't agree, right? And saying, hey, I know it looked like we wanted to fly this empty leg. I think we could probably push for maybe squeezing this in here, and this is why I think it's the right idea, regardless of their seat at the table, so to speak. But at the end of the day, we have an informed captain and somebody that's going to be able to make an informed decision and kind of consider all cards on the table, but it's not necessarily a consensus-based company. which I know can be different from other groups, but it keeps us from, spending too long in process or kind of clearing things through ranks of review, and moving quickly, but again, responsibly and with safety as kind of the key priority. So that kind of wraps up our presentation. I really want to get to the Q&A. I know that's what we're most excited about for the rest of our team. So I'll go ahead and stop sharing and turn it back over to Brian.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Emily. And thank you, Brock and Ricky, for taking us through information about Netflix. And thank you to the Jet Linx team, Nick, Ari, and Jeff, for taking us into a bit of the world at Jet Linx Aviation. One of the things, the biggest takeaways that I'll say just from watching that presentation before we get to the Q&A is you talk about inclusivity. And that is something that is super important, obviously, as NGPA, a nonprofit organization that works to bring about a greater amount of diversity, inclusivity, and equity across the aviation realm. It's good to know that we can partner with companies like Jet Linx, like Netflix, to ensure that our mission is being spread to a different area of aviation that we really haven't been a part of big time. Ari mentioned directly that he got one of his first jobs into the corporate aviation department by being a longtime NGPA member and someone he met through Provincetown. Emily, I met Emily about a year and a half ago as she reached out to get involved with our NGPA Industry Expo, and they attended with us out in Palm Springs. So it's companies like these that are really true signs to our membership, as well as to those who support the LGBT community, as well as other minority communities, that these are places that we want to work. These are places that you want to be, to know you can feel yourself. And I think, Emily, you said it, bring your best self and bring your true self to your job. So thank you for sharing that information. Thank you as well to the Jet Linx team for sharing that information about all the things that make your companies great. And it's interesting to learn about that stuff within corporate and business aviation, because like I said, I didn't know much about it all. My experience, admittedly, as a 121 commercial pilot is when I hear corporate pilots making that very bad mistake and giving their customer numbers on guard on 121.5, calling in about customs and car requests and whatnot. That's my connection to corporate aviation there, or my thoughts of you being whisked away in some fancy cars and whatnot, as you're shuttling around some high level folks around the country. So it's good to learn a little bit more about your specific companies. And I think now, as we head into the question and answer portion, we're definitely going to get even more of an insight into the world of corporate and business aviation as we take your questions. So as we said earlier, to participate in the question and answer portion, feel free. On the bottom of your screen, you will see a raise hand function. If you have a question, whether that be for Netflix, whether that be for Jet Linx, feel free to jump on in, raise your hand. We'll call you out and we'll activate the mic on your system, whatever you might be using, so you can ask your question in real time. Also, right now, our operations coordinator, Luke, is going to be promoting a couple other team members who are joining us from Netflix and from Jet Linx. They represent other areas that some of our listeners might be having questions about. So we have representatives from corporate flight attendant, scheduling, as well as aviation maintenance. So any questions that you have in all of those areas, we've got a whole bunch of team members on from both Jet Linx and Netflix now. Again, hit the raise hand function, and we will call you out and we will take your questions in real time. So I'm going to kick it off with the very first hand that I saw raised. Luke, help me out here. Nicholas Mansfield has a question. Nick, you are unmuted. You can go ahead with your question to the entire team here.
Hey, thanks, Brian. I'm just curious. So I'm sure there's a lot of us that I was in 135 and I got laid off. And in a way, it was almost an opportunity for me. I had been thinking about going to grad school, and now I'm doing that full time. And I'm sure there's 121 guys that are furloughed and they're going to do something else for a couple of years maybe. But I was just wondering, I mean, Netflix or Jet Linx, if you guys have any advice on ways for people in our situation to kind of keep the ball rolling so that once things get back up to full speed, that we still have aviation sort of currency, and not necessarily like literal landing currency, but the sort of things that recruiters would look for, like maybe while we're doing something non-aviation during that downtime that would help us for that aviation roll down the road.
I'll go ahead and jump off here. I'd say stay connected with who you know. Don't be afraid to reach out on social media to engage new connections. and let them know that you're available and what you're doing and what you look forward to in aviation. Definitely use social media for your benefit, and LinkedIn and Facebook are great avenues for that.
Yeah, I agree to echo what Jeff stated. Nick, I'd say obviously continuing your education, there's always a positive in that. That also expands your network, as you're probably finding out now. And then also possibly being open to continue to explore other avenues that you might find non-traditional, such as contracting through various operators, attending these types of events. And I think ultimately over time, obviously aviation is such a small world that you'll continue to connect with people and just, hopefully find an opportunity. But I think just staying active is the best thing you can do.
Thanks, Ricky.
Well, thank you, teams, for that. And thanks, Nicholas, for your question there. We have got some questions coming in the chat box here. This is from Doug Carr. Doug Carr says, it's exciting to see Jet Linx and Netflix aligning their brands with NGPA. So thank you again for that. Doug would like to know how both of your companies would support an employee facing a gender transition. So if someone from Jet Linx and Netflix could address that, that would be great. Again, Doug would like to know how your company would be able to support an employee who's facing a gender transition.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in here. So at Netflix, we have over the last couple of years, we have a trans at affinity group within Netflix that's really helped to define, what true support looks like for that community. And as such, we've been able to kind of tailor our benefits to reflect what we feel would be comprehensive for anyone going through a transition while employed with Netflix. So similar to what we do to cover like IVF, we have a similar program that they provide for employees that are transitioning. And while I have not had that direct experience to say, I know exactly what the insurance coverage is, from what I understand, it's great coverage similar to IVF that's typically at a high cost, as well as, again, the flexible leave time to take all the time off that you need.
And then from Jet Linx standpoint, I would say, assisting that employee with all aspects of the FAA medical aspect that needs to be addressed as well to maintain a first-class medical, and working with the health benefits that we have to support that individual through that transition. So I know that the FAA can be a daunting entity to deal with, and we do have resources locally at our local FSDO and nationally in Oklahoma City that we can reach out to assist and support us in that.
Thank you both for taking on that question. And also here at NGPA, we have resources available for those who are going through a gender transition. We have a transgender support committee here at NGPA. You're more than welcome to reach out to that email's transgender@ngpa.org. And also we partner with AMAS, Aviation Medical Advisory Service out in Denver, also the main aviation medical service that works with a lot of the pilot unions out there. And we have a partnership with them where our NGPA members, in fact, get free counseling services from a doctor through the AMAS program. So if you're a member of NGPA, you can check that out on ngpa.org under the Member Services tab. You'll just have to be signed into your account and you can get linked up with AMAS if you have any questions regarding gender transitions, whether it be HIV and medicals or any other medical issues that you might be facing. So there's definitely things out there and definitely services here in-house at NGPA where we can help you out. So thank you for tackling that. A lot of questions, couple different hands raised. I'm going to go to one that we got on one of our social media channels as we are advertising for these programs. And this one is, I don't have a name, I have the question. So sorry, I didn't get your name down on it. But they said, I'm a 121 commercial pilot and I was thinking of making a switch to the business aviation world. What would you recommend my thought process be as I approach this career decision? And how can I go about making a transition into that type of flying?
I think I'll kind of field this one a little bit. If I'll kind of lean back into what Jeff was saying earlier about your networking. I think one of the most difficult aspects of getting into the corporate world is building those relationships and connections. And through social media and LinkedIn, you'll find that you can build these link outs, and also events such as NGPA, other virtual events. And once we get back to some normalcy, the conventions that you can partner with to gain that exposure. I definitely, it depends on regionally where you're at, job postings, but definitely creating an interest within the companies that you find interesting, whether it's 135 or Part 91, just really exposing yourself and putting yourself out there. The more information and more connections you can build virtually in this environment is probably going to be your best tool. But anybody else can chime in on that as well, Jeff.
Yeah, so
Thanks,
I'll jump right on here with Brock saying, also on your resume, consider not just putting your pilot duties, but maybe some of your customer awards that you've received, things that you're doing outside of flying for the company, to show that you're involved not only just as a pilot, but more aligned with the company values as well. That would go a long way with us, and I'm sure Netflix as well, to get a better picture of who the candidate is.
Yeah, if I may, Chad Brewer, who's one of our captains in the Bay Area, actually had experience in the airline world prior to transitioning into the corporate aviation. Chad, would you like to chime in and give your perspective on this?
Yeah, when I'd spent 5 years in regional airlines and had near zero exposure to corporate aviation before making that jump over, part of it was definitely luck, just in meeting the right people. But with that luck, was possible because of putting myself out there, going to airports, knocking on doors, finding out who operators are locally, and really just building those relationships. Because in corporate aviation, especially, it really matters more who you are. And if you can get face to face with somebody or meet somebody, and this was back in 2010, so LinkedIn wasn't quite as big as it was now, not quite as many people on there. So I didn't lean so much on social media, although I definitely would now and do. And certainly what Brock was saying, I leaned a lot on NBAA, and they have a lot of great virtual conferences, and you can make connections through those. And they also have regional organizations. Unfortunately, right now with the pandemic, you can't go to those in person, but when that's possible, I would certainly look into that.
Thanks, Chad.
Awesome. Thank you there. Sorry. Oh, I'm clicking on different screens here, coordinating between the questions. Sorry about that. Thank you for taking that. All right. We have a lot of hands raised now. So let's go to our next live question here. We're going to go to Stephen Tustin. Stephen Tustin, your microphone should be unmuted. You're free to ask your question to our team of panelists here. Welcome.
I just unmuted. Thank you both to Jet Linx and Netflix for being here on behalf of the board. I really appreciate you guys spending time with us here at NGPA today. My question is kind of, what does a typical day in the life of one of your flight crews look like at each of your operations, being as they seem a little bit different? I think Jet Linx, you're more of an aircraft management and jet share company, whereas Netflix is an in-house flight department. And for those of us who aren't familiar with corporate aviation, we'd love to hear what that might look like when you show up to work in the morning or night.
Well, Kristen, would you like to kind of give a perspective of kind of our Gulfstream presence and what a workflow and day looks like? And then maybe Keith, give a little representation of what our King Air team looks like.
Sure. A typical day, I guess, with the Gulfstream is we usually show up about 2 hours prior to departure to prepare for the flight. And in the Gulfstreams, you'd meet with I'm one of the pilots there, by the way. You'd meet with your crew members to ready the plane. Typically let's say we're taking an executive somewhere. Of course, we have all the support from Netflix with the fueling, the maintenance is there, the plane gets pulled out by Netflix employees actually out of the hangar, And we certainly have a briefing, a sit down prior to the flight with dispatch about what's going to happen. And then the day of course, there's always a briefing before the passengers come between the crew members to talk about the day's events. When the passenger shows up, they usually drive through the gate onto the field and drive directly up to the aircraft. Now with COVID, there might be a temperature taken, and of course, we've kind of changed our protocol of wearing masks and so forth, but generally the passengers are boarded and we would fly them to wherever they are going. It might be one leg a day, or we could go somewhere and wait for them for several hours and either fly them back to where they're going, or it could be, a trip of one day or a week and a half. It all depends. It varies on the Gulf Streams. So it could be domestic, it could be international. So it's hard to say a typical day because it's forever changing. But generally we don't fly or work more than 14 hours a day of a total duty day. If it is longer than that, we'd certainly use a third pilot or switch out the crews as necessary. So our days can really vary depending on the mission. So it's kind of hard to give a typical day, but I would say most of our days are 1 or 2 legs, and then it can just vary from there. We might sit somewhere for 2 days or longer, and it's hard to say a typical day for the Gulf Stream, but that's basically how it goes.
Each trip is completely different, and that's the dynamic I think we each leverage and look at the challenge of each trip that's posed to us, and it engages each aspect of our team, from Rebecca and the scheduling team to Nate and our maintenance team, and then it's a totally different dynamic for our King Air team if Keith wants to branch out on that.
Hi, afternoon everyone. Thanks to the NGPA, my first webinar doing this with everyone, and thanks to the panelists and of course our leadership team, as you've gotten to know, are pretty amazing. Basically it's kind of a pre and post COVID question because things have definitely changed. I'll start with before COVID happened, the shuttle program. I'm located up here in the Los Gatos, San Jose airport base, but when we were running shuttles for employees, we had a morning and an afternoon shift, and assuming everything ran smoothly throughout the day, you were scheduled on either the morning or afternoon. You basically would, it's almost scheduled like an airline in the fact that the passengers have to show up on time for the shuttle department, because we shut the door at that time and we leave, and we take those employees down to the LA area, offload, take on the LA employees, come back, and you're done for the day. Then the afternoon crew would come in and repeat the same thing. Obviously, we support other portions of the business with productions, and now with COVID going on, things have changed rapidly, but thanks to Netflix, they've been so supportive of all of the aviation department during this time period. Myself, with a new baby at home, and I did charters all over the world. I flew large cabin airplanes, small cabin airplanes. This is actually my first turboprop, but came in with a lot of experience. And I must say, for me, besides training, I think I've been gone one night in a hotel in 8 months. So, it's pretty spectacular depending on the work-life balance with it. But I think on the day-to-day, not being a number, passengers start to recognize who you are. And it's funny, we have group meetings and people say, what do I miss most during COVID? Some might say, I miss hugging my pilots and saying hi. You get that personal interaction. And having flown, not in the airlines, but just 135 with some interesting operations in the past during economic downturns, I feel very fortunate to work for such a spectacular company that's open in so many regards versus a typical aviation company.
Thanks for covering that. And Steve,
I can assure all of
thank
you,
you
I
so
did
much
not
for your
pay
question.
him to say that, but thanks, Keith.
Thanks, y'all. A bunch of questions coming in. This one is for Jet Linx. Jet Linx, Derek Telfer has asked that they've applied for an SIC position in Austin, Texas and Sterling, Virginia. And they're interested to know more about the floating base position as well. And Derek was wondering, would a floating base position, a floating base position tend to be advertised on your website as a separate posting, or is this something that you'd express at an interview level or once you're offered a position in a specific place?
So I'll go ahead and take that, guys. The floating position is a separate position posting. You'll see it'll say Hawker 800 floater pilot. That'd be your floating position where you're home based and not attached to a tail at a base.
And just to bounce off that, as we kind of discussed a little bit earlier, the majority of our positions, I'd say at least 95% of them, are not going to be floater positions. They're going to be attached to one of our base locations, and the expectation is that you're going to live or be willing to relocate within about 2 hours typical drive time of that location. Our floater positions, since we have such a diverse fleet, tend to be when we end up with, you know, maybe 5 or so more of one aircraft type. And then it starts to be justifiable for us to potentially then look at someone that can cover PTO, continued training, days off, and bounce around to different aircraft throughout the fleet.
Thank you, Derek, for that question. Hope that answers that. And thank you, Nick and Jeff, for your answers there. Just a time check. We're right at the 1 hour mark since we kicked this off. Our teams we've already discussed. We're going to continue in a little bit further, about another 7 questions in the docket here. So we'll continue on with these questions. This one coming from one of our members over in Europe, in Austria. In fact, this is from Jordan Pitchler. They said, since Netflix is also a tech company, do you develop all the apps and the software that crew members and dispatchers use? Are those in-house apps that are created for the Netflix team?
Rebecca, do you want to?
Yeah, I can take that one. My name is Rebecca Herbert. I'm in charge of our scheduling team. A lot of our software that we use is industry standard. I would say that the pilots are using flight planning software that a lot of other general aviation companies use. However, we did partner with our tech side of our business when we developed our booking tool for our shuttle. So basically, all of our employees have access to a website that they can log into. They can put in their route of dates of travel when they want to go. And it looks very similar to, you know, an Expedia page or Southwest, where you can show the flights that are available, how many seats are available. You click what you want, and then you click to book it. And then we are on the scheduling side. Then we have the passenger manifest for the flights that day. And then the flight crew members have an app. So when the passengers get to the airport, they check in each person. And this software also links with our human resource department. And so we can verify that the employee is actually a current employee and eligible to fly. And then there's a photo of them. So that way the pilots can kind of recognize who's getting on, and it makes their life a little easier to check everybody in.
Cool. Thank you, Rebecca. And thank you for that question from Jordan. Next up, we are going to go another live question. Nicholas Hagan, you should be unmuted at this time. Go ahead with your question to our team of panelists. Thanks for joining us today. Nicholas, you are muted. You're unmuted now, I think. Nicholas, you still with us?
There we go. How about now?
Perfect. We got you. Go ahead with your question.
There we go. So talking about personal top of market compensation, women and minorities in the workforce have historically been paid under less than their male counterparts, white male counterparts. In aviation, the white man makes up a large number of the workforce, and although there are a large number of women and minorities, over the past few years, that difference between the two are still huge. One good thing about like airline pay is like it eliminates all that uncertainty because it's based off start date. How, if your pay is tailored towards each person, what is in place, if anything, to make sure women and minorities are paid fairly based off their credentials?
I can speak up.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Emily.
All right, I'll just give a general overview, but I would say as, you know, I'm obviously part of talent acquisition, so I work very closely with our HR representatives. And like Ricky kind of gave an overview, our top of market compensation model is subjective in nature, being that it is tailored to each individual's specific experience, as well as the relevance of their experience for the role we're seeking to fill. All that to say, we want it to be very fair, and we don't consider parity being the norm, considering, you know, like Keith mentioned, he didn't have King Air experience, but he had a lot of other extensive experience. Whereas we might hire somebody that's just had King Air experience, and same for maintenance, right? We might have somebody who only has King Air experience. We may have a maintenance technician that's very experienced on the Gulfstreams as well as King Air. So we don't necessarily feel like that's apples to apples. But the way that we kind of make sure we're not obviously creating any biases or, you know, underpaying a traditionally underrepresented group that's likely been underpaid for the majority of their career is by basing it off clear market data that we can very clearly show, like X company is hiring said pilot at this range. We consider them relevant, and we consider your skill set to be above that. So we would pay higher regardless of what either your incoming expectations is or what your prior compensation packages were. And that's a huge piece of just like our HR department, making sure that that's regulated. And also, you know, especially because to your point, persons of color, women typically underrepresented in the aviation field. And as we build our team, we're not looking to bring in folks and especially in those cases, want to take extra care to make sure we're being diligent.
Yeah. I would echo the same thing Emily has stated. I work very closely with the talent team and the HR department to make sure that we review annually our compensation across the board. We look at ProPilot surveys, NBAA, and a few others. And every pilot that is staffed, regardless of their gender, their ethnic background, is equal in starting pay for whichever aircraft they might be on. We do adjust sometimes if you're hired on to an aircraft in Omaha versus New York, where the adjustment needs to be made for cost of living. There are those type of adjustments made, but generally speaking, we staff the same, and then we review each year to make sure we're competitive with the industry.
Awesome, thank you.
Thanks, Nicholas, for the question. Thanks to our panelists for your responses there. Next, we're going to go to a question in the chat box here. It's from Kia Williams. Kia Williams said, thank you for your time today. She truly appreciates the inclusivity piece. Being a CFA or a certified flight attendant working for Netflix and Jet Linx are definitely attractive opportunities. I know that many companies are just now bouncing back. Would there happen to be future opportunities for flight attendants at both Jet Linx and Netflix? And then what would you say would be the top 3 qualities to make a flight attendant candidate stand out for employment consideration?
Nick, you want to jump on that one?
Yeah, I can take that. So for Jet Linx Aviation, we do not employ very many full-time flight attendants. That is usually only in the case that an owner specifically requests it. Outside of that, we often work through several contract agencies and employ contract flight attendants on a need-driven basis. So if an owner says, hey, this is a long flight, we'd like to have one for this trip, or if a Jet Card member of ours requests one for a trip, oftentimes we will then work through several contract agencies to put someone on that trip. But we do occasionally have an owner that requests a full-time flight attendant. And in those cases, the biggest things that we're going to be looking for, again, is really about that culture fit. It's about providing an exceptional level of service. Any type of trainings or higher level service standards that you can provide that you've gone through are going to be excellent to make yourself a great candidate for that position.
I can jump in and answer that question on behalf of Netflix. My name is Penelope, and I'm the flight attendant manager in our aviation department. We have 6 full-time flight attendants, and we try and do all of our trips only with our in-house flight attendants. So we've really moved away from the contractor model, so that we have twice as many flight attendants as we do Gulfstreams. And so that way we always have someone who's fresh and ready to go out, so no one's getting burnt out. And part of the reason we moved away from the contractor model is we want to put Netflix employees on our jets, because for confidentiality, you know, we're flying our executives, we're flying talent. So we just really want to make sure that anyone who's on that jet is really going to, you know, honor the confidentiality. And we want our executives to feel at home. They fly a lot with us. So it's important that that space is a continuation of their home or their office, and we want everyone to be comfortable. When we're hiring flight attendants, the things that I look for are they going to be a good Netflix fit? Are they going to embody the parts of our culture? I also look at what extra is that person bringing to the table that no one else is. So for example, in our team, we've got people who all have the same basic safety training skills, but everyone's a little bit different. We don't all have to be cookie cutters. For example, we have someone who is a personal chef. We have another person who has extensive experience from being in the Air Force. We have someone else who has a strong safety background, who is also our in-house medical trainer. So I look for people who've got something extra and special to bring in. So they're the main things that we look for. And whilst experience is important, like we don't want to train people from scratch. We want people who do have some experience. The length of that experience isn't the most important thing. It's the person. You know, would we want to go to work with this person? Is that the person we would want on our plane? So we put the person over the process, and sometimes the amount of experience too. So we need a person who's also very adaptable and coachable and really wants to be there.
Awesome. Thank you, Penelope, and thank you, Nick, for addressing that. A bunch more questions coming in the chat window. Going to go to one more live question here. It's from Gabriel Acevedo. Gabriel, you should be unmuted. You can go ahead with your question to our panelists. Thanks for.
Hi, can you guys hear me? Awesome. So I am a military helicopter pilot based out of San Diego, and I'm looking to transition out within the next few years. I guess my question is, where do you guys see your company going in the next few years as I transition out? And any advice or people I should be talking to right now while I start my transition out of the military?
Did everybody catch that, Gabriel? You're coming in a little broken up, but just make sure everybody caught it. He's saying that he's getting ready for his transition out of the military space. And is there any advice that could be offered to kind of foray into the corporate aviation department, coming from a rotorcraft helicopter pilot into fixed wing? Did I capture that correctly, Gabriel?
That is correct.
So I can give a quick update on Jet Linx. We do have a relationship with an organization called RTAG, which assists in military folks transitioning over to fixed wing and to the corporate world. So we're very much looking at individuals with that background and can assist in providing some guidance in how to do that. We are always, it would seem that we're currently are staffing and have a lot of open positions around the country. So I would recommend keeping an eye on the positions that are listed and then reaching out either to myself, Jeff, Nick, or Dee at Jet Linx for any type of assistance and guidance that you might like.
Thank you, Ari. And thank you, Gabriel, for joining us, and thank you for your service as well. And good luck as you head into the civilian world in the upcoming months. So a couple other questions here in our chat window. This one was kind of answered in the chat window, but I think it's a good one, so I'm going to address it. It's from Jasmine Bly, actually one of our members at NGPA Australia. So good Friday morning to you down under there, Jasmine. He said, hey, from down under. Thanks for taking the time to chat. And he's interested to know about safety systems, different safety systems and whatnot that are in place for maintenance, as well as other safety areas at both Netflix and Jet Linx. Airlines have their own safety departments, and is that the same over within the corporate world as well, or is that kind of handled by multiple different groups or within the flight department specifically, or do you have a separate safety department that works with your flight department? And I know, Nate, you answered some of that question. If you want to answer that live for everybody as well, feel free, or anybody else.
Yeah, sure. My name is Nate, and I am a aircraft maintenance technician at Netflix. And yeah, the big thing for our flight department, we have a safety manager that oversees our safety programs. But because we aren't big enough and scaled to have a dedicated safety department, we kind of all act as our own safety manager. Safety is obviously the priority for us in maintenance, as well as operations. So we operate within the aircraft manufacturer OEM publications, FAA documentation, as well as our own flight department SOPs. And you know, if we see something, we say something. We have a pretty good SMS program coming online that we utilize to make safety concerns known, and also a good learning experience for all of us. Because we're a young department. I mean, we've been around for 3 years, so we have a lot to build on.
We have with us Brian Walker, our flight coordination director, and I'd like to maybe loop him in here for a second if he wants to answer that, Brian.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, Brian Walker, director of flight coordination with Jet Linx, and we're kind of the dispatch group of the Jet Linx company. So we have a number of programs that we use. Specifically designed around safety, but it's all kind of built in and baked into the whole process. We have a program called Vocus that we've programmed to alert us to different hazards that can occur throughout a mission, just based on the aircraft type. Since we have so many types, this really helps us out. It'll advise us if a crosswind is exceeding a limitation on an aircraft, wet runways when we're very limited to takeoff and landing performance based on the aircraft as well. And it gives us just these little triggers that'll just help us out and give us kind of some backup with that. But we also we partner up with our pilots. We're partners. We're in this together, and we're another set of eyes for them on the ground. We're well versed in NOTAMs, METARs, TAFs, you name it. I like to consider my team captains on the ground. We can do everything except for how to fly the plane, and that's why we're glad we have people like Ari and Jeff on our team who can do that really well. So again, we're just providing another set of eyes for our flight crews day to day. And we're proud of that. We like doing that. We like being behind the scenes. You know, kind of if you think about a watch, all the gears grinding on you know, on the inside of that watch, and that's what we do best. And like I said, we take that into account, the safety aspect of it, and it's kind of baked into to everything we do.
Great, thank you, Brian. I know we're now at 5:19, and I told all our panelists I'd cut it off at 1:15. Are we good for 2 more questions? Yes. 2 more real quick, and then we'll wrap things up here. This one's from Robert Jaworski. I'm going to mess up your name. Jaworski. I apologize if I really messed that up. But Robert has a question for both Netflix and for Jet Linx. First for Netflix, I said, I appreciate how you described flight time minimums as a benchmark and how personality also plays a major role in the hiring process. Just as a curiosity, what are some of your flight time minimums when hiring for SIC positions within the flight department at Netflix?
Currently right now, just to the scope and scale of our operation, as we are young, a majority of the hires that we have hired are not SICs. That is something that we're growing into, and that's based on the demand of what we needed from crew members to be able to utilize our fleet globally, as well as provide multi-captain crews. So everybody on our staff right now is considered a PIC and can be dispatched as a PIC. Those programs we are going to develop as we start to hire again and branch out. The original benchmark for King Air was about 3,000 hours total time. Obviously, if from an SIC program, we would want to make sure that somebody is at least at about the level of an ATP, of a level of experience at which we can build on that person and their experience and give them the opportunity within the company. But I would say we don't have a hard set number because that development plan hasn't been put in place yet.
Cool. Thank you, Brock. And for Jet Linx, a little bit more personal from Robert. He's saying, with about 2,500 hours but no corporate jet experience, what aircraft, if hired on at Jet Linx, would one expect to get as an SIC position off the bat?
That's a great question, Robert. Thank you. So having no corporate experience, but having 2,500 total hours and some turbine time, going to be an excellent candidate for most of our SIC positions. In those positions, again, you're going to get a PIC time and type, but no prior experience is required. This is a common thing that we see where we'll have those that maybe don't have corporate experience, but say, you know, I'm flying a 777 as a PIC. I should be qualified for that Gulfstream captain position. How come I wasn't selected, or how come I wasn't able to move forward? It's just based on those safety requirements that govern our industry, is that we do require for PIC positions that you have a current type rating and a minimum of 250 PIC hours in that aircraft. So being someone that meets a lot of the general hours, but without any corporate type ratings, you're going to be an excellent candidate for most of our SIC positions on any aircraft, from, you know, a Beachjet up through some of the different Citation models, into even potentially looking at, you know, Falcon or Gulfstream first officer positions.
Cool. Thanks, Nick, for addressing that. Robert, I hope that covered it for you there. I actually have one question that I want to end it with, and then we've talked to almost everyone. I'm going to call you out. Jane, we haven't talked to Jane. She's smiling already and laughing. Jane, we haven't talked to you. Anything that you want to add? We've heard from almost everyone else. Actually, we've heard from everyone else here. Anything to say, Jane? Just say hi.
Hi there, I'm Jane Butcher, and I'm also one of the captains on the Gulfstream at Netflix, along with Kristen, you see here, and Brock. But for those, I have done 135, 91, and 121. So I was also with some of the people calling in. I was at United Airlines about 20 years ago, though, and I've also been about 20 years in corporate. And I just want to let you know that it's a great industry. It's a great different part of aviation. I enjoy it so much, being able to fly all over the world, fly different places, experience it as we're there. And that I agree with what some of the panelists said before about just networking. Just keep talking, keep introducing yourself to people, joining groups like this, getting yourself out there. And if you can, you know, walk in and just introduce yourself and say hello, and just keep in touch with everybody. I did throughout, even when I was at United with the corporate side, the freight, I flew freight as well. And it's very important to keep the relationships going, because you never know when we may meet again.
Thank you, Jane. Sorry for calling you out there. I just had to do it.
That's okay.
My nature. All right, so this is a question from me. I'm interested to know, and one person from each company, whoever has the best story to give, you can give this out. Tell me about a time that you were absolutely just starstruck by one of your passengers and you just couldn't control yourself. You couldn't contain yourself. Who wants it? Anybody? I think Ari's coming.
For our team, nobody should be starstruck, because you know you're supposed to act natural.
This is also a test. Emily asked me to ask the entire Netflix team, so you're being tested here. No, but
I think that everybody is pretty cool, and in our flight department, and because we do fly so many celebrities constantly, I think that if you were a starstruck type person, it would not be the right job for you. But we do see them, but you know, a person's a person, you know, we're all human beings, but I think you have to be cool and just, you know, be chill when you have famous people on board.
I would agree with Penelope. We do come across very famous people in government, out of government, in movies, but we treat everybody the same, and playing it cool, like Penelope stated, is a thing that I believe those individuals are looking for. They're not looking for anything special. They just want to be treated the same way as everybody else, not any different, I would say.
All right, no one bit on my question there. I was hoping for some really, really good story there. See, now I'm kind of the same way. I really do well in the corporate world. I like, since I commute from Chicago to my base on the East Coast, I fly for JetBlue, that's no secret. I do a lot of our Transcon and our Mint products, so our premium lay flat product, and we have a good amount of people that are of star quality, and I get yelled at by my husband anytime I don't take a picture or say hello to someone famous up there. He is very much, my husband is very much known to go up to people or see anyone that is, I mean, they could be Instagram famous, like with over 300 followers, and he lost it. I took him out to dinner one time for his birthday years ago, and there was like an Instagram food blogger, and he lost his crap right there. And I'm like, no one even knows this person. They literally had like 400 followers, and he sat down and bought them wine, which was his birthday. I don't know why he did it. Besides the point. So no, I'd do well in the corporate world. I'd be able to keep my cool. I like how Emily there said she wouldn't be able to keep her cool. This is why she's not on the flight. So
It is true, but I will say we do get some sightings in our LA office, which, by the way, this is the lobby in our LA office, but I have been in the Los Angeles office at the same time as Barack Obama and Denzel Washington. So even though I only ran into them briefly, I didn't obviously say anything, but that was fairly cool. And I think I've seen Jamie Foxx in the lobby as well. But people watching from the LA office lobby, and again, a normal time and not a global pandemic, it can also be very entertaining.
Well, thank you. So that about wraps it up. There's yeah, we've covered all the questions. There's a couple more that came in from social media, but in honor of time, we're going to end it here. So on behalf of all of our panelists, well, on behalf of NGPA as a whole, thank you to all of you for joining us. Thank you for the partnership that Netflix and Jet Linx has extended to NGPA. And thank you for the work environments that you are setting up and the culture that you perpetuate at your companies of inclusivity, of ensuring that you're hiring top talent that is encouraged to be themselves, no matter what that may be. So thank you for your support of NGPA. Thank you for putting the work into this webinar with us. And thank you for taking the time out on this Thursday afternoon. For all of our attendees, thanks for joining us as well. More NGPA webinar content is coming. It is on the way, as well as different virtual hangouts. So go to ngpa.org, whether you're a member or you're not a member. If you're not a member, top right, click join now. We'd love to have you join our ever-growing NGPA family here. But then also we have a nice banner at the top of COVID-19 member resources. We have virtual hangouts that are happening on the regular, happy hours that you can just jump on Zoom, say hello to people in our time apart. A great way to get together. We have the different webinars that we're doing. We'll continue to add that content on our COVID-19 member resource page. And then also our next live virtual event is coming up on Saturday, September 19th. It'll be at 4 p.m. Eastern time. Everyone here, we'd love to have you join us, all of our panelists as well as our attendees. We'll have a lot of cool stuff. Virtual Queen of the Fleet. People will be showing off their own private airplanes, and we'll have our members vote on the best aircraft that some of our members have. We'll have some entertainment from some comedy talent that's been with us here at NGPA in the past. A drag queen might make an appearance. We'll go into a couple other areas here at NGPA, and we'll be giving away some pretty cool prizes up to and including 25,000 American Airlines Advantage miles, as well as some other things. So lots of tricks up our sleeve for our next virtual event. That'll be the NGPA Worldwide Gathering. That's happening on Saturday, September the 19th via Zoom. All the links will be out for that. Check your email inboxes, and a link will be up on our website as well. So we look forward to seeing you then. Doug Carr also wanted to point out, for anyone interested in corporate aviation jobs, be sure to check out NBAA's website. It's nbaa.org/jobs, and you can find a lot of different jobs that are available there. Also on NGPA's website, we have a member resources jobs function. We also post jobs for our membership right on there. On behalf of all of us here at NGPA, stay safe out there. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to Jet Linx. Thank you to Netflix. We got some music to head on out. So if you want to stick around and listen to some music, grab a drink, maybe do a little dancing. That's something that I miss a lot now in this pandemic time, dancing. So thanks everybody for joining us. We'll see you next time. Until then, take care of yourselves and each other. So long from everybody here at Netflix, Jet Linx, and NGPA. Good night, everybody.